There is a place on Earth where the ground is white as far as the eye can see. Not snow, not sand, salt. Billions of tons of it, baked flat by 10,000 years of sun. From above, it looks like nothing. A blank, a void. A place where nothing grows and nothing moves. But beneath that crust, something is sleeping. Something the modern world cannot function without. It is called lithium. And the story of how it went from an obscure mineral to the most contested resource on the planet is a story about power, betrayal, and a race no one can afford to lose. For most of human history, lithium was a curiosity. Discovered in 1817. Named after the Greek word for stone, used in small quantities, forgotten by everyone except chemists. Then the world decided it needed to stop burning oil. And everything changed. The electric car needs a battery. The battery needs lithium. And more than half of all the lithium on Earth sits inside a triangle roughly the size of Western Europe, straddling 3 neighboring nations in South America. This is the story of that triangle, of the nations inside it, the powers circling it, and the question that no one has answered yet: who does it belong to? The Lithium Triangle. That is what geologists call it. 3 countries, 3 governments, 3 very different ideas about what to do with what lies beneath their feet. The first nation holds the largest reserves on Earth, roughly 40% of everything. Its salt flat alone is larger than the state of Connecticut. It stretches for 10,000 square kilometers of almost perfect flatness, sitting more than 3,000 meters above sea level. For centuries, this nation was one of the poorest in the region. Landlocked, cut off from the ocean by a war it lost in the 19th century. A wound that never fully healed. And then the world came to it, not with help, with hunger. The second nation in the triangle is smaller, drier, more experienced with foreign attention. It has been mining copper for over a century. It knows what it means when powerful countries start paying close interest in what lies beneath your ground. The third nation is vast, complicated, and sits on reserves that are only now being fully mapped. It has seen what happened to its neighbors. It is watching carefully. Together, these 3 nations hold what the entire world needs to build its electric future. Every electric vehicle, every grid-scale battery, every phone, every laptop, every storage system meant to replace the fossil fuels that are heating the planet, and none of them fully agree on how to proceed. Before we go further, we need to understand who wants this resource. Because the story of lithium is not just about the 3 nations that have it. It is about the powers that do not. The first player is a nation that understood early. While others were still debating whether electric vehicles were viable, this country was building factories. By the time the rest of the world woke up, it had already positioned itself to control not just the supply chain of lithium, but the entire production line from raw mineral to finished battery. It now processes more than 60% of the world's lithium. It manufactures more than 70% of the world's battery cells. It has signed investment agreements, port deals, and infrastructure contracts across the triangle. It did not conquer. It purchased, quietly, methodically, over decades. The second player arrived late and arrived loudly. It spent decades dependent on oil from the Middle East. It watched the electric transition coming and began scrambling to secure its own supply lines. It passed legislation. It offered subsidies. It sent delegations. It pressured allies. But securing lithium requires partners, and many of those partners had already signed with someone else. The third player is older, more patient, and more dangerous in a different way. It has no serious domestic electric vehicle industry. What it wants from the triangle is influence, contracts, presence, a foothold in a hemisphere it was pushed out of decades ago. It has offered loans, military cooperation, and diplomatic recognition to governments in the triangle. In exchange, it wants access. And then there are the mining companies, private, multinational, answerable to shareholders, not to citizens. They have moved through the triangle like a tide, offering investment and jobs and development, and taking something far more valuable in return. The most dramatic story inside the triangle belongs to the First Nation, the one with the largest reserves, the one that, for a brief and turbulent moment, tried to do something almost no developing nation has ever successfully done. It tried to keep its resource for itself. In 2008, this nation wrote a new constitution. Inside that document was a single clause that would define the next 15 years of its politics. The lithium beneath the ground, it declared, belongs to the state, cannot be privatized, cannot be handed to foreign corporations. It is the inheritance of the people. The world watched. The mining companies waited. For a few years, it worked. The government built processing facilities. It trained engineers. It announced plans to manufacture batteries domestically, to capture not just the raw material, but the entire value chain. To be not a supplier of minerals, but a manufacturer of the future. Other nations had tried this with oil. Most had failed, but this nation was determined. Then came the politics. In 2019, the president who had championed nationalization was removed from power following a disputed election. What happened in those weeks is still debated. Some call it a coup. Some call it a constitutional transfer. The international community was divided. The mining companies were not. Within months, new agreements were being negotiated. Within a year, the old president had returned from exile. Within 2 years, he was back in power. The agreements were canceled again. And in 2025, the cycle repeated. A congressional session over a new lithium deal with foreign partners descended into chaos. Protests erupted in the streets, tear gas, barricades, a nation divided over a question it cannot stop asking. Is this deal good for us or good for them? The answer, as always, depends on who you ask. Here is the contradiction at the heart of this story. Lithium is being extracted to save the planet, to replace the fossil fuels that are warming the atmosphere, to build the batteries that will power the clean energy transition that scientists say is the only way to avoid catastrophic climate change. But the extraction itself is devastating. The salt flats where lithium lives are also some of the most fragile ecosystems on Earth. Flamingos nest there. Indigenous communities have lived beside them for thousands of years. The brine that is pumped to extract lithium draws from the same underground water systems that feed the communities above. In some areas, the water table is already dropping. Farmers who have irrigated the same fields for generations are watching their yields shrink. Communities that were never consulted are watching machinery arrive on land they consider sacred. The clean energy revolution, it turns out, has a dirty foundation. This is not an argument against the transition. The alternative, unchecked fossil fuel combustion, is worse. But it is a reminder that there is no version of the future that comes without cost. The question is always the same: who pays? In the triangle, the answer has always been the same. The people who live there pay. The people who live elsewhere benefit. In 2024, global demand for lithium reached record levels. New battery gigafactories were announced on 4 continents. Every major automaker had committed to an all-electric future. The timelines were aggressive. The supply chains were not ready. Prices spiked, then crashed, then spiked again. The volatility sent shockwaves through the governments of the Triangle, whose budget projections had been built on assumptions that the market had already abandoned. New deposits were found in the deserts of another continent, in the geothermal brines of an entirely different region, in the clay deposits of a country that had never mined lithium before. The Triangle was no longer the only game in town, but it was still the biggest, and everyone knew it. The largest player in the processing chain doubled down. It signed new agreements. It offered new financing. It began construction on processing facilities inside the Triangle itself, reducing the need to ship raw material halfway around the world. The second player accelerated its own domestic mining programs. It invested in extraction technology. It lobbied allies. It designated lithium a critical mineral, which in the language of industrial policy means we will do whatever it takes to secure this. The third player sent more delegations, more loans, more offers of cooperation that came attached to conditions written in small print. And the three nations in the triangle watched all of this and negotiated and disagreed with each other and made deals and canceled them and made them again. We have seen this before. We have seen what happens when a small nation sits on top of something the world needs. We covered it in the story of the strait that controls a third of the world's oil. We covered it in the story of the minerals that made one nation the quiet master of modern technology. The pattern is consistent. The resource is discovered. The world arrives. The nation with the resource is offered a choice: partner with us or be left behind. The terms of partnership are rarely equal. Some nations have navigated this well. They built institutions. They demanded equity. They trained their own engineers, built their own capacity, insisted on processing domestically before export. They played the long game and won it. Others signed too quickly, took the loans, welcomed the companies, and found, a generation later, that the wealth had passed through their territory without stopping. The nations of the Triangle are living through this choice right now, in real time, with the whole world watching and most of it pulling in a direction that serves its own interests. There is a word that keeps appearing in the debates over the Triangle: sovereignty. The right of a nation to decide what happens within its borders, to set the terms, to say no. It is easy to say the word. It is much harder to exercise it when the alternative is poverty, and the entity offering the deal controls access to the markets you need to survive. This is the quiet violence of the modern resource economy. It does not require armies. It requires patience, capital, and the willingness to wait until a government is desperate enough to sign. The Triangle nations are not powerless. They have leverage they have not fully used. They could coordinate. They are, after all, neighbors. They hold the majority of a resource the world cannot do without. A coordinated position would be extraordinarily powerful. They have not coordinated. Not yet. History suggests they may not. The same foreign powers that want their lithium also have an interest in keeping them divided. But history also has surprises. And sometimes the nations that were supposed to lose find a way to win. The salt flats are still white. The flamingos still nest. The sun still rises over 3,000 meters of altitude and turns the crust to fire. Beneath it, the lithium waits. It has waited for millennia. It will wait a little longer while the world argues about who gets to take it, and at what price, and on whose terms. What happens in the Triangle over the next decade will determine something larger than the price of batteries. It will determine whether the clean energy transition is a story of shared prosperity or a story of familiar extraction dressed in new language. The oil age was defined by who controlled the wells. The battery age will be defined by who controls the mines. The names of the places have changed. The logic has not. This is Links of History, because nothing happening today began today.